Well, hello. Thanks everyone for joining us here today to talk about peer-to-peer fundraising and virtual events in a pandemic. It's still a really hot topic that a lot of organizations, a lot of our friends, you two are both still working through, and we have a lot of clients at Firefly Partners that are still working through how to continue this pivot and how to keep people engaged and have successful events. So opening up the conversation today, I want to say a couple of housekeeping items first. First off, welcome. I am Taylor Shanklin, the VP of Growth at Firefly Partners, and we help nonprofits engage and create more deep, long-lasting relationships with their digital audiences. And we are recording this, and we will send out the recording afterwards. So if you want to watch a replay or share it later, you can. And I'm really excited to be joined by Tracy Earll and Krystyn Kuckelman, who are just like my go-to peer-to-peer experts in the space when it comes to asking them, hey, what's working? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And so we really wanted to just have an open dialogue today and allow for people to ask questions and have an open Q&A with all of us. As like I said, we're all seeking for answers on how to have successful events. And I'm logged in there twice. Don't mind that. It's just
One of those days.
the Zoom gremlins. So Tracy, let's start with you real quick. Would you mind doing a quick intro?
Absolutely. My name is Tracy Earll. I've been in the nonprofit, specifically peer-to-peer space. I think this is year 16, I believe. It's definitely where I feel the most comfortable, working and giving my thoughts and opinions. I just started a new job yesterday, actually, as the new director of experiential fundraising at Susan G. Komen. Moving over to a new employer and still getting to do fun stuff like this is why I do what I do. So thanks for having me, Taylor.
Yeah, good to have you here. Awesome. Thanks for joining us and congratulations on the new role. You're going to do great. Krystyn, go ahead and introduce yourself, please, for us.
Hi, everybody. My name is Krystyn Kuckelman. I have been in the peer-to-peer world before they even were calling it peer-to-peer. It's 20 years. So I started my career in team and training, and I went on to launch 3 national fundraising campaigns. And I'm currently a senior fundraising strategist at Firefly and excited to be here as part of this conversation.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we're going to get into some topics like retention of participants in this weird virtual world that we're living in, what kind of data to look at. But let's just first get it started with, from your perspectives, when you think about peer-to-peer and virtual event fundraising at this moment in time right now. Tracy, from your perspective, who should you focus on when it comes to your participants and your audience? Do you have any deep thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think our natural reaction, obviously, is to go to our participants from last year. And, last year was a weird year. I mean, as you said it, we are still in a pandemic. We like to think when the calendar turned that we weren't still in a pandemic, that, 2021 brought us something different. But the reality of it is we still are in a pandemic. So, looking at our participants from last year is going to give us, those are our faithful people. They were with us last year and they, lived and breathed, the ups and downs and the unknowns with us. But I also think it's not a good idea to forget about the people who may not have come back last year for one reason or another. There was so many unknowns. There were so many people, losing jobs. I mean, I was one of them. I mean, and it's one of those things where we want to make sure that we look beyond just last year and really dig deep into the people who have been supporting us for a while, or give them an opportunity, let them know that you want them back. Then there's going to be that new realm of people who came to you and your organization was doing things virtually that maybe you hadn't seen in person before. That's another great place to focus on. Now these people know you, They may, I don't want to say you've built relationships, but you've built at least Zoom recognition, you know, that kind of thing with people. So there's a whole gamut of people that, you know, are new to the organization, probably through your virtual programs, to be able to take advantage of as well. But the biggest thing is like, just, you know, don't forget the relationship part of it is what is going to get people to come back. So, you know, it doesn't matter if they were with you last year or weren't with you last year or are new to you or whatever, you know, it still comes down to that personal relationship, picking up the phone, dropping in, you know, private email or a text or, you know, something like that. That's what's going to get people to come back.
Yeah, and I wanted to start with that question because oftentimes it's like, well, what is the event? What is the virtual event? Whereas we're not taking a pause to first ask, who are we inviting to this event and why? And who are we inviting into our fundraising and our event community and why? So I'm curious, Krystyn, if you have any additional thoughts on either retention strategies or even like thinking about, well, maybe there is an opportunity for a new audience in the virtual world.
Yeah, that's interesting because, you know, I've been talking to so many people who have seen an influx of new donors since March. I was talking with my friend who works at the Hunger Project, and they had this influx of $250, $350 donors. And it might be interesting to engage this new donor audience to participate in your event and come be part of your community and have them get a sense of what this strong community is. You know, if I'm thinking about, you know, this year's events, I'm definitely, just like Tracy said, focusing on top fundraisers and top team captains from the last 3 years. I agree with Tracy that last year, you know, this time almost, we didn't really know, you know, what a virtual event would even look like. I think people have a better sense of what it is. I'm not even using virtual when I'm talking about events because I think that's one of the overused word. I know you and Taylor have been talking about that. So this is our event and this is what it looks like this year, whatever people are having, half in person, half online. But for me, I'm really targeting on those 3 years of participants. And I probably am going to create a strategy to invite these new donors to the organization since March to be part of this community. And like Tracy said, it's multi-channel. It's snail mail, phone calls, digital, you know, every channel you have, I'd be using to reach out to people to increase retention.
Do you have any idea or indication on like what some of those channels are that have brought the new people in? So like that example of the new donors, the new participants, do you know where they came from? Was it like they tried something different on social media or something else?
I think this particular example that I asked, he actually said that when he reached out to people, it was people who got the stimulus check who didn't feel like they actually, this is a weird way to say it, this is my words, not the donor's words, they needed it and they wanted to give back to the community. So that's an important point you made, Taylor, because we have to know how our donors came to us. And that's part of the great follow-up with thank you calls or surveys or that. How did you hear about us? Why did you give at this point? You know, ask those questions because that data is going to help you build a stronger program moving forward.
I like that you mentioned that actually, because it's not the first time I've heard that about the stimulus check. I heard that from 1 or 2 other people as well at different organizations. So I think that's interesting.
And we're preparing for another round of that. So it's going to be interesting to see if this is a twofer, you know, maybe people are same kind of thing, going to give back to the community.
Yeah.
I was going to add, I think it's important to remember that not everyone, you know, has been fully affected the same way. So, you know, I think a lot of the staff members and, you know, volunteers that I worked with last year, they got into a place where they were afraid to ask because, you know, they're so worried that everyone's feeling, you know, bombarded or, scared or all those things. And I think, the key to fundraising during a pandemic really comes down to, you don't fundraise like it's a pandemic. You fundraise like you've been trained to fundraise. And, that means building relationships and talking to people and still making the ask. And, if someone has to say no, they're going to say no. But the reality of it is that if you don't ask, somebody else is. So, I think, we say virtual events in a pandemic, and it's, Krystyn, I actually love what you just said, is like, don't think of it as any different. This is an event season. This is a calendar year. You have a budget line you have to reach. And the reality of it is that you're not going to reach it if you don't do things, I say business as usual. I mean, sure, you're going to have tweaks here and there, but ultimately you're a fundraiser and you need to be asking for money.
I agree. And I think now that we're seeing some of these giving reports and this data coming out from fall 2020 events, that organizations, did pretty well. I know we're going to talk about the top, 30 peer-to-peer programs, but I've been talking to people who, came within 10% of their goals. Some people exceeded their goals. These aren't these monster programs that, always hit the news. But these are, small and, slow and steady wins the race. So I agree with you, Tracy. This is not the time to stop fundraising. And I know we're going to get into that kind of communications piece, but there's more confidence in our industry now. And I think that when we see these totals and these averages, I know Blackbaud's getting ready to release a report in a few weeks, but these fundraising averages that we're going to see, I think are going to give us all a lot of confidence to build and continue to building this great community that serves our mission.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you look at I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, Taylor, but I think if you look at, and I, spent some time earlier today taking a look at the peer-to-peer top 30, and sure, there was some drops, but what's really interesting is if this was really about fundraising or the economy or all that stuff, you would have set a more consistent percentage of decrease overall. But what you saw is some organizations dropping by 50% and some organizations only dropping by 12%. And what that said to me is those 12% dropping organizations just got a lot more creative, a lot more innovative, a lot more diligent. And some of those 50% organizations panicked and were like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. So again, I think we need to look at what's happened in the last year of our industry a little bit differently and say, listen, am I getting as innovative and creative with my program as I need to be? Or am I just doing status quo and doing the same thing? And, there's been jokes and conversations about, is peer-to-peer dead? Is it, do we need to figure? No, I think we just need to keep peer-to-peer refreshed. I think we need to follow the trends. And if this is where we're finding people, then this is where we have to be. And you just need to kind of be able, I said I would never use the word pivot again as the calendar turned to 2021. But I think we just have to be more ready to be constantly pivoting. And that may be even pivoting in the middle of an event season and making some changes and making some turns lefts and rights kind of thing, as opposed to thinking I'm just going to do things the exact same way I've always been doing them and hope that it works out in my favor. I think those days are over.
Yeah.
How about we use the words agile and creative?
I like that. I like that.
Right?
Agile.
I'm going to have to write those on a piece of paper and stick them right above my computer that I stare at all day, every day. So I quit using the word.
You are agile and you are creative. Well, on that note, what were some of the creative things that you saw that worked? Maybe some of the things in the peer-to-peer top 30 report. And by the way, for those not familiar with the peer-to-peer top 30, the peer-to-peer forum does a big data report every year on peer-to-peer fundraising programs. And there's a top 30 report. Was there anything that really struck you that maybe went boop and went up, and you maybe have a theory as to why? Maybe there was something creative that you saw them do, and if so, what were some of those things? Because I think this is a good place to get some of those ideas out too, because maybe that creativity wasn't even all that complicated, or that expensive. It was just interesting. You know?
I actually have a great example, and it comes out of the ALS Association, the Chicago chapter. My good friend Kendra, who is the development director there, she's just a creative spirit to begin with. Follow her on Facebook, and let me tell you, her kids' birthday parties are ridiculous. Ridiculously good, I should say. But she just kind of dove in and had fun with it, and she created these personal team captain boxes that basically put an event in a box. So she didn't start selling this virtual event that was going to be happening on Zoom. She sold this event that you can actually do at home with your family, and door markers, like you walk around the neighborhood, and they didn't knock on people's doors and ask for money, but they knocked on people's doors and put door markers out that said, hey, I'm walking for the ALS Association. This mission is really important to me. Here's a link to where you could donate to me. If you see me out walking in your neighborhood, just wave, or those kinds of things. I mean, that was basically that wasn't a virtual event anymore. That was just their event. It was just a different way they were doing their event. And I know that Kendra talked and was actually awarded one of the peer-to-peer programs of the year for her, ingenuity and creativity, and they matched their goal for the year. And keep in mind, their walk was in June, so it wasn't even like they had all summer to make it all happen. Like they got creative. I almost said the P word. They got creative really quickly. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't get creative that quickly. I sat back and thought, oh, everything's gonna be open again by September. We don't have to worry about it. And they just jumped into action and made some really cool small changes, didn't spend a ton of money, and again, made their goals instead of seeing the 50% decrease or whatever others saw.
Yeah. Well,
I agree. I think the organizations, excuse me.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think the organizations who had a solid decision-making process were able to create whatever their new event was quickly. And what I saw from the top 30, our top 30 has changed a lot over the last few years. We're seeing different kinds of events. We're seeing, do-it-yourself events. The Children's Cancer Ride, was in the top 30, and they've always been a do-it-yourself event. So this is going to change the way we think about our peer-to-peer events and getting creative. I agree. And giving people an experience like the ALS Chicago Walk. They had the stuff they needed to create the event at home. And not everybody's going to have the budget to send a kit like that, but you can, through all of your channels where your walkers, riders respond to you, can kind of create this stay at home event. It's going to be really interesting, I think, to see what happens for fall events, because with more people getting vaccinated and some commitments from our administration to, get people vaccinated by 4th of July, perhaps there will be more in-person events. But right now, I think everybody's planning for sort of this at-home virtual event, but who knows if we're going to be able to open up, or people are going to do these kind of pod events where they gather their neighbors or all their teams to walk together, on one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just putting that link to that top 30 event in the chat. So go grab that if you want to take a look at the latest. I think a couple of things that stand out, and this actually segues us really well into the communication aspect of it, is the ALS Chicago example that you shared, Tracy. It's just something that's relatable, that is achievable, right? And that's where I think sometimes we maybe think like we've got to get so creative or off the wall, or it's going to be expensive, and then we just can't do it, and it just shuts down and doesn't happen, right? But I think people still are just looking for ways to relate to other people right now, to have something fun to do at home when we're all bored and about to lose it, and creating those sort of relatable, achievable things are effective.
Yeah.
So
I think what's really forgotten is, like, this is all about relationships. So the reality of it is that if you are not picking up the phone and talking to your participants and asking them, what they'd like an event, or, why they are participating, or, things like that. I mean, that is the number one thing that you are going to do to increase your retention rate, is really just, I truthfully, like, know things about them, understand, what brings them there, and not just what brings them there, but what brings them coming back, and, that kind of thing. And I think, when it comes down to communication, and I probably, you didn't ask the question, but I just got excited and wanted to talk about it. But I mean, personalized communication as much as possible. I mean, the more you mass communicate, the more people feel like this isn't important to you, because it's just, you're not making it important to me, kind of thing. So, I'm just a humongous advocate of flipping the switch on this and really making this about, personalized messaging and targeted messaging. And if somebody walked last year, you should send them walked or ran or biked or DIY'd or whatever it is. You should be sending them a very different message than someone who didn't, participate last year. And someone who got one donation last year for $500, you should be communicating with very differently than someone who got 50 donations that equaled $500. Like, it all comes down to how you're building those relationships with people, and getting them to understand your appreciation level for them and how important they are to your organization. And again, if you're, thank you so much for, for raising $500, that person who, wrote a check for $500 is going to take that very differently than the person who, got 15 gifts or 20 gifts for $10 a piece.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing about the top 30?
Do it.
Because this has been on my mind. Most programs besides those 30 should be comparing themselves to the top 30. This report has really been dictating the health of our organization for many, many years. I'll never forget, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, the top 3 programs had major declines. And what spiraled out of that was peer-to-peer is dead. And that these 3 programs dictated to the health. And here I was, managing a $10 million program that had 7 to 10% growth every year. And I'm having to respond to my CEO that no, peer-to-peer is not dead. This is just a show of what the top 30 programs have done. So if your program isn't in the top 30, please do not compare yourself to that. What we found out, those organizations had major changes coming down from C-suite down. So the top 30 is so fun to look at. Heart program, is #1 this year after many, many years at $101 million. The heart program is, Heart Association is a $1 billion organization. So this is something to look at, reflect on. But where I found my stats was looking at these platforms who put out averages. And that's where I really went to compare myself against is, what is my top fundraiser average versus what they're publishing. And talking with Tracy, that's how you and I became friends. I wanted to hear what your program did. So really using your network to connect with programs of your size to do comparisons against.
Yeah.
I'm going to get off my soapbox on that one, but
I'm glad you did. Because it's really easy to play that comparison game, and then that actually can sometimes put you in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
If you're like, well, I have to do this, and maybe that's
peer-to-peer is not dead. It's changing. And you have to be, what's our word? That's not
agile.
And creative.
Agile and creative.
Yeah. And know your numbers. I know we're going to get into this, but really dig into your metrics as much as you can to know what your program is doing against last year and the year before. And then, as I said, connect with somebody that has a program like size of yours so that you can have healthy metrics for yourself.
Yeah, Absolutely.
I think that's it. The best comparison you can do is against yourself. I mean, if you had a major decline in your own in your own program, that's going to give you way more information than the fact that, a $50 million walk program had a 50% decline. You can't compare yourself to them. And again, if you look at your stats and you even increased in, a couple of things, if you increased in the average raise per donor, or, that kind of their participant, I mean, those are key areas for you to say, what did I do last year to make that happen? What communication did I have? And really find your pockets of successes and go back and really do an analysis, a SWOT analysis of like, what did I do differently last year to make these increases happen? And even scarier yet is when there was a decrease, what did I do with everything I know now? What should I have done differently? I think, if you're not spending hours and hours, I'm not exaggerating, if you're not spending hours and hours really digging into your data and trying to decide where things went right and where things went wrong, that's really actually what's going to help you decide what you should be doing this year, a lot less than, kind of throwing darts at a dartboard and hoping something sticks.
Yeah. So let's mesh that a little bit then. Let's talk about how you can look at your data, understand your own storyline at your organization, and then use that to inform your communication and your strategy. Starting at the top, what are some of the metrics that you think matter when it comes to peer-to-peer programs? What are the most important? Like if I could only, look at 5 data points, or even 3, like what should those be?
Krystyn's the data gal. We talk about it all the time. I'm going to let her tackle this one.
If data
we agree too.
If data, I'll never forget. I had a real big career lesson many years ago. I got caught a little bit with my pants down, not knowing my numbers. And my CEO looked at me and he said, "Kuckelman, you need to know your numbers." And now I'm a data geek. And that was, and it's proven to be a success, and it can be scary. And if anybody's scared about data, give Firefly a call. We're working on an awesome program that can help everybody look at their data in a meaningful way. When I think about data points, first of all, everybody on your team needs to be on the same page about what's important to the organization. Not one person can make those calls. So this would be where you bring people together. But always where I'm going to start is retention, team captain averages, and walker averages. I'm never, ever again thinking about $0 walkers. I spent too much of my career. Why are people not raising money? Think about the people who are raising money and how to get them to raise more money. So I'm always thinking about retention. I'm thinking about team averages, by team type, if you can break it down, family and friends, corporate, your industry partners. And top fundraiser averages. These are the people who are raising the most money. So how much are they raising? And here we are, we had a wacky year last year. We're probably going to have a wacky year, this year. So I'd really be looking across 3 or 4 years to be comparing these numbers to. Tracy, what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be thinking about that and dig down as much as you can to understand those details.
Now, so Krystyn always points out the top 3, which really are the top 3. There's a couple other things that I like to really pay attention to. And that is when it comes to your retention of your participants, like what is a year 1 participant raise versus what is a year 2 participant raise versus what a year 3 participant raise is, and kind of find out where that, where this, the incline goes and then where it sort of starts to decrease. And really, if you can get that, say, your people raise this, X amount year 1, 20% more year 2, 20% more year 3, and then year 4, they drop down by 20%. Take a look at your list. Who's your year 3 walkers? And like do some special extra outreach to them. Talk to them, and see if you can get them to not fall off in year 4. So that's one of the things I also like to focus on. Another thing is if your system allows for it, look at when your participants register versus how much they're raising. So if you have a participant that's registering more than 90 days out for your event, chances are their average fundraising is a whole heck of a lot more than somebody who's registering only 30 days out. Then I used to do this all the time. I would set a goal. I'm going to get so many percent of my 30-day out walkers to register 68 days out and increase their fundraising. And same from my 60 days out to my 90 days out. So, there's so many ways that you can really break down data to see the potential. Somebody said this to me early on, and as Krystyn said, it really is the truth. Like, data drives your revenue. Like, if you can digest your data and you can understand your data and really understand, what the key things are, that's going to tell you exactly where you should be focusing all of your time. It drives 100% of what you're supposed to be doing.
I love that point.
In a virtual world or in a non-virtual world.
I love your point about retained walkers. And that's something that we really dug in when I was at the National Kidney Foundation. And we learned that if we retained a walker in year 2, they raised 2.5 times what they raised the year before.
Yeah.
And that was really shocking to us when we really got into the minutia about what our walkers did. So I totally agree with Tracy, is looking, it's not easy, but really digging in and looking how year 1 through year 3 retained walkers do for you.
And think about how much less you'll have to work if you can retain a higher percentage of we all know how hard it is to find a new participant. Like, how much easier is it to just keep the people we have? Sure, we're going to lose some to attrition, but we will not have to be, busting our butts every year to be like, I need to find 29 new team captains just to cover my attrition rate or my, retention rate year over year. How much easier if you said, I'm going to focus 90% of my time on team retention.
Definitely.
Because I only need to spend 10% of my time on acquisition of new teams.
Yeah. Make them want to come back, Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Krystyn, what were you going to say?
Well, it kind of goes back to, and I know we're going to talk about communications, but, really acknowledging through every channel what your year 2 walker did in year 1, as much as you can get customized in your communication, team name, amount they raised, what walk they were in, or, where they participated. Because people want to be acknowledged for their accomplishments.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to roll probably about 5 more minutes. So let's talk about that communication. What we talked about data, and I did put into the chat some of those different metrics that both of you shared. Taking that information, what recommendations do you have around communication? So how do you apply looking at a retention number and then, map that to your communications plan?
I think it's less about the channels. We all know social media is big right now, but what social media? And, emails are dying or people aren't reading I think it goes less to the different channels and more to the segmented. The more I would spend more time, I would choose a less number of channels and do things more segmented. And when I say communication, if you're not at least making 5 phone calls, personalized phone calls per year to each one of your top participants or your top team captains or your top, whatever, if you're not making at least 5 personal phone calls a year, then that's the first place I would start. You could do 1 30 days after, an event, and then maybe, 6 months between, and they don't have to be about the event. They don't have to be about fundraising. They can be about, hey, these are the exciting things that are going on at the organization right now, thanks to the money that you raise. And you don't have to ask them to participate. You don't have to, you're just laying the foundation in their mind for you to call back again 90 days ahead of time and say, hey, we'd love to have you come back. Follow that, personalized, any other messaging that goes out should follow along with that personalized communication. So the messages can be, remind them, like when I talked to you back in May, or when I left you that voicemail back in May, I told you that we did this, and refer back and just kind of all of the elements of your communication plan should really build on top of each other. But it really should start, the absolute start focus of that should be that personalized communication. And I know the first thing out of everyone's mind is, when do I have time to make those personalized phone calls? I mean, when do you not have time to make those personalized phone calls? One personalized phone call would take the time of 52 emails. I swear to God, like the benefit ratio, time to benefit ratio, you know, it just will multiply like you wouldn't believe. So I think, you know, again, everything should go along, you know, follow along with what a personalized communication plan really looks like for each one of your participants, or top participants anyways.
And you're going to start your community back to the data. Bringing it back to the data is really understanding the cadence of your registration to plan out a thoughtful plan. And I'm still voting for multi-channel. I do really believe in the personal touches. And I know that many organizations have cut between 50 and 60% of their staff, so that can seem daunting. But when you learn how much your retained walker raises, use that as an opportunity to recruit volunteers to help you. Yeah. Your top, you know, best volunteers are going to want to help. They have time to help because everybody's, you know, mainly still stuck at home. And share with these people that if we retain somebody, they're going to raise X more than they did last year. Could you help make some calls? So engage volunteers in that, but really using the data and understand the cadence of your registration to start the communication flow. And don't forget about snail mail. Use all the social media challenge, phone calls, but as personalized as you can get, mentioning their team name, how much they raised, where they participated. And again, it's not all about registration. You know, the call to action isn't always about registration. As Tracy mentioned, you know, as you're getting ready to really kick off registration, you should be sending some impact communications. Post-event, again, you know, 6 to 8 weeks after the event, you should see if some communications around the money you raised is helping in this way, so that it's not all about register, but it's impact driven as well.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about remembering that the experience is about them. And how do you communicate how that experience is about them? If you have data on what channels they tend to respond to you in, great. Use that data. And that's also like, that's a level of personalization, is reaching out to them in the channel that they respond in. If they never open your email, and you can see who opens emails, then, you know, then maybe email is not the best way. Maybe you should pick up the phone and call them or send them a text or whatever it is. So I think that's actually a level of personalization that we often think about. Personalization is like, hi, first name, glad to have you back on team name, right? But it's also about meeting them where they are, and that's personalization. All right,
well,
so
even back to that data, you know, on the emails and those channels, one thing that we were so surprised by when we finally took a look at it is when people actually open the emails and use that data to drive your communication strategy. If people are, most of your people are looking at emails at Tuesday at noon, you're sending that email Tuesday at 11:47, so that by noon it's there, they're ready to look at it.
Exactly.
And you know, don't be afraid to do A/B testing on subject lines as much as your resources allow.
Yeah, totally. All right, last question then to close it out is, I want a tip on a technology that you think is interesting right now for this virtual experience. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do, but what's something that like makes your ears perk up in the world of technology and peer-to-peer fundraising, or, you know, virtual events?
I can't believe I'm going to say this, and maybe it's because I have a 10-year-old daughter, but it's TikTok. I think, you know, I read a stat that there was, over the pandemic, you know, the height of the pandemic, there were 400 million downloads of TikTok. So I'm hot on TikTok, and I think it's a very interesting way to engage your influencers, your community, to share your story and share your impact. And I think there's so many people on TikTok now, even parents, you know, that's going, again, knowing the age of your participants, meeting them where they are. But there's a lot of people on TikTok. So I can't believe I'm saying it.
But really fast. I'm gonna agree with the TikTok thing, which I, as the daughter or mother of a 15-year-old daughter who actually went viral on TikTok over the Christmas break and had like, I think she's up to like 15 million views on one TikTok, which was absolutely stupid. It was about Harry Potter. So I mean, we can go viral on much better things than what my 15-year-old we can do. But I'll also say, and I'm from the school of Taylor Shanklin, and that is make things pretty too. And if you have not downloaded Canva, like no longer do your emails have to be like email letters or, you know, I mean, even your texts to people, participants or whatever, you can master Canva in probably an hour, and not master to like Taylor's level, but I mean, like, because she's amazing, but master to, you know, a pretend creative directors, use it. I mean, add pictures, send them pictures of their team last year, or, you know, just their stats or whatever. Make it fun. Use Canva, and you can get a free version, but I think almost every nonprofit can get a free, you know, upgraded version by just sending them your 501c3 number. So yes, have fun. Canva.
Totally. It really makes the post, whatever you're making on any platform, really kind of pop, and stick with your brand and everything like that. And that's important. I'm going to add one more, not TikTok, but let's say you don't want to do TikTok, but you are already on Instagram. There's this is my funny story before we close out. There's a Reels feature on Instagram now, which is more TikTok-esque.
Yes.
And that, I think, is the new way to grow on that channel.
Okay.
Because people on the internet like weird little short videos.
They do.
They're like 30 seconds. I don't know. I had never tried it before, but I made one a couple days ago or something just to try it. It was a stupid video of me grilling chicken, and it had like 1,000. I was just like, here's me doing an Instagram reel.
Okay.
It had 1,000 views within 30 minutes of people I didn't know. So I think if you, and I didn't even do it that well, but I think if you kind of can look at, maybe you're already in that channel, and maybe you're doing Instagram stories or posts or anything like that, try the Reels feature, and it could help you get seen if you use the right hashtags and everything like that to people who maybe don't know you yet, but do have an affinity for your cause. I've certainly found organizations that I haven't known that I find there that way. And then I'm like, oh, I'm interested in that cause. So, you know, try new things on channels that you're already in when they come out with new features.
And they're constantly coming out with new features. That's
constantly. Yeah. I've only made the one. It might stop there for my personal Instagram account.
Good.
Awesome. Well, hey, Krystyn, Tracy, I'm glad we worked out the technical difficulties. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I hope this was helpful to everyone who joined us today. Like I said, we are going to send out the recording. We're going to send out our contact information. If you still need help with this stuff, we're here to help you. Let us know. We'd love to help you either dig into your data or your strategy or your event website, whatever you sort of need in the context of, I got to create a good peer-to-peer program this year. Give us a call and we can help. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I'm out. I think, Tracy, you have to stop the recording since.
I think Krystyn does.
I think it's me. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
See you later.
Have a great afternoon. Bye.